Chrome OS news. We've got Steam Deck is right up there. So you guys did some stuff with the Steam Deck this week.
The video went out as we're doing this podcast. So by the time you guys hear this, a day or so late. But yeah, the video went up. We wanted to do one thing with the Steam Deck before I sold it, because to be fair, I never use it.
So I haven't watched the video yet, but I saw the title when I was scrolling through to get my show notes. Didn't you write a piece kind of similar to this before?
Yeah.
So it's kind of
sorta. I'd said, like the idea of Steam gaming, the fact that Steam Deck is a thing,
right,
and being sold is a good thing for Chrome OS. Once we got it in, started playing a handful of games. I'm terrible at console games. I'm no good with joysticks anymore, and I just don't play with that stuff any longer. So it was more of I'm going to test this, see how the graphics look, see how things move, and honestly, it wasn't until probably the day of the video that I thought, like, oh god, I probably need to make sure like the graphics aren't turned down to like medium or low,
right?
Because it's a small screen, so they could probably get away with some of that stuff. But instead, it was Apex Legends, and literally everything was cranked up max. So max quality, max textures, max anti-aliasing, max everything,
blooming, all that
except
stuff.
for resolution. So resolution is obviously it's a 720p basically panel. It's 1280 by 800, and so it's locked to that. So it's
1280 by 800, really?
Yeah. So it's just a 720p panel.
Okay.
And it works just fine in that form factor. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And so that obviously is going to take a lot of the tax down. You don't have, even with a 1080p monitor, you're going to have at least a 50%, 60% bump, something like that, in the number of pixels you'd have to push just for 1080.
Right.
That's not considering quad HD or 4K. So, comparing, apples to apples here, it's a custom GPU or an AMD APU in that thing. It's been compared to Zen. I'd have to look back in my article again now. I looked it up for it. Zen 2.
Zen 2, yeah, because we're on Zen 3.
And then what's I can't think of their GPU architecture off the top of my head.
It's Radeon and...
Radeon something. It's an 8-core Radeon something.
RDNA.
Was there a number with it?
2.
RDNA 2.
There you go.
Yeah, and to me, I'm going, okay, that doesn't literally means
I
nothing.
have zero gauge for that. What's that? That's a dedicated GPU, but it's a 50 or 60.
It's NVIDIA 30.
I want to say 60. Yeah,
3060, because there's a 3070 that's better. But
there's a 3080 now.
Okay.
It's crazy. It's just
so it's not like this Steam Deck is maintaining some like big gamer towers worth of hardware.
Right.
It's pretty modest, to be honest with you.
What's crazy is that's similar to what's in the Atari VCS that's on my desk, but I have not seen nearly that good a performance from the Atari.
Well, and that's what I just wonder, like with the Steam Deck, if they didn't spend time to really think. I'm getting a phone call and it won't go away. I want to decline you. There we go. With the Steam Deck, if like it's a custom APU GPU built 100% just to run Steam,
right?
That's like they were able to narrow that focus a little bit. So I think some of the higher end Chromebooks that are coming will probably have CPUs that are way better than that.
Yeah, I mean, based on early benchmarks, what we've seen, the 12th gen CPUs from Intel and their Iris Xe graphics, they're up there. They're up there with like 2000 series GPUs.
Yeah, and so I feel like the CPU is going to be way stronger than what's in the Steam Deck, and the GPU might be on par with it. And so, but the combination of the two, just a high-end Chromebook with Steam games, should be really great. Like, it would be a different thing if it was like, it's a little jittery or whatever, but the point of the video is to actually show some gameplay and show us moving around and see, like, there's no frame drops and textures look really rich and nice, and you're getting all the lighting effects. And,
right.
Apex is running just brilliantly, and don't forget, this is an executable file. It's a Windows executable file. And if you didn't know any better, and I just handed that to you and you played it, and I said, hey, this is a Linux-based machine, you would think that game is clearly written for Linux. There's no way that something written for a completely different binary is going to run this well on a piece of hardware. And it does.
Right.
And it wasn't just Apex. Apex was just a good a thing that I downloaded and had ready. But, we tried multiple games, and PUBG did not work.
Yeah.
For some reason, it just wasn't working. But they've got a whole list of it didn't show it on there, but they've got a whole list of what do they call it? Great on deck, is that what it is, or good on deck? I don't
Great
know.
on deck sounds cool. I like that.
I think it's great on deck, and so if it's good, it gets put in that list. I think they've tested it a little bit, and then they'll also ask you, like I got polled a couple times, like, do you feel like this game is running well?
Yeah,
rate this and whatever. And so games that get rated well get put into this thing. So as a Steam Deck user, you'll be able to go through that. Hopefully, that means that once they get Steam fully rolled out on Chromebooks, we'll get kind of the same thing. Great on Chromebooks.
Yeah, that gives me a lot of hope, because I was curious. I hadn't tinkered with Borealis for a couple of months actually. So yesterday I reinstalled it on the CX9 and was playing Day of Defeat. And it, in my head, it feels better than it did when they first rolled it out, but it's still not great. Yeah. And I was worried. That it's like, well, they're never going to be able to get this to work quite right. But this is proof positive that there's no reason, because Borealis is technically running on bare metal. It's just being served through Chrome OS as a display.
Right.
There's no reason this shouldn't run very well.
Yeah,
like Day of Defeat source on that's an i7. There's no reason it shouldn't run very well.
Perfectly smooth. Yeah. So. And the 12th gen processors or Intel processors are faster, but the GPU is a big improvement over 11th gen even, which was a big step up. So, I think the combination of all that stuff's going to help things be pretty good. And like you said, really the only bar to any of this working, because it was like multiple pieces when we first heard about this. It's like, okay, one, Proton's got to work. So Proton's the compatibility layer that makes, because there's not a whole lot. They're a handful, but by that I mean like 5,000. I think we looked it up.
Yeah,
Linux games, but there are like 50,000 Windows games, and so the whole thing was kind of hinging on the idea of Linux being able to run Windows games well. So that was one thing.
But that was the cool thing, is that that was all in Valve's hands, because they had to make it work to make this thing work. So that wasn't wasn't on Google on there, which is really cool. I'm sure they had a hand in it, but
and so that it was like cool. I feel confident in saying that Valve has gotten past that. Like they've made it to the point where this is 100% playable. Is it going to work on every single game? Probably not, but I think they're aiming for like a 99% compatibility rate.
And they're not far off.
Yeah, I want to say they're in the mid 90s already or something. So that was the big first jump. And then the second jump is just making sure that the container that this is sitting in is going to work the way it's supposed to in Chrome OS. And so, it's running Arch Linux. So is the Steam Deck. You're using the same Proton protocol. So really, it feels a little bit apples to apples now that we've kind of had some time with the Steam Deck to go, this is what I'm going to expect on.
And I will say that the gameplay yesterday wasn't decidedly different, but I have noticed I'm always connected to an external monitor, and when I launch a Steam game, I have to close my Chromebook because it doesn't push it correctly and everything's off. But once I close it and relaunch the game on my monitor, it works fine. But the boot and the load for Steam was way faster, and it looks a lot cleaner. It looks like they've really tweaked it, because you always get the main window that pops up, and then you get the chat window, and then you get the news. You get the 3 windows that pop up. They all popped up simultaneously, and they loaded super fast. It looked really clean. It felt like I was playing on a native machine.
So they'll get that stuff worked out. I have little to no doubt that they'll get all those pieces. But once they've got that stuff done, and the container is taking full advantage of the hardware on offer, we're going to have some Chromebooks that are going to be really good at running Steam games.
Right. And that's the other thing, and I'm sure they're working on this, but, Crostini and Linux has access to the GPU, but it kind of feels like it's just like you remember back in the day, you had a Windows machine, and if you didn't have the right driver for something, you would use a generic driver. It feels like that, because there are certain software that they work just fine in the Linux container, but if you go to adjust your GPU settings, it's clearly not seeing the GPU.
Right.
And that's a Chrome OS thing, because like DaVinci Resolve is the one of the other big video editors. I have read in forums where guys have these new Tiger Lake Windows laptops with XE graphics. DaVinci Resolve will see that GPU, and it recognizes it, which allows you to tweak the GPU settings. It will not even see it on a Chromebook. So that's something Google's probably still working out, but eventually we'll get to that point, and then that means eventually these containers, whether it's Steam or Linux or whatever, we'll be able to see the onboard GPUs, but hopefully with what like Robbie found earlier this week, we'll be able to recognize external GPUs, and then
hopefully
that becomes a game changer entirely for Chromebooks.
Yeah.
So
because like stuff I know that LumaFusion, for instance, is coming via Android, and they're working hard on getting that done. But these different things where you have photo and video editors that need GPU support basically to do what they need to do better.
Right.
Google has to keep figuring out ways to make that easier as more of a generic thing instead of, and I get it, like it's harder with Chrome OS because it's not a Windows device. It's not like, oh, go online and get all your drivers and all that kind of stuff. It's, okay, well now we've got to make sure that this stuff's built in and can see, these GPUs and work properly with them without the end user really doing anything. And so that's a lot of work.
It's a big hurdle, but also feel like it should be, in the long run, it should be a little easier than other aspects. It's not like we're talking about printers here where there's 10,000 models on the market. Right. We just need support for, the basic NVIDIA drivers, the basic Intel GPU drivers. Right,
because, really, they have control over what Chromebooks are going to come out and what GPUs are actually going to become available. And so if they say, hey, look, we're going to allow 2 different models from NVIDIA, one from AMD, and the Intel, whatever is coming in the latest Intel, we'll build that obviously into the baseboard for that. And that's it. Like, we're not supporting all this other stuff for right now. And, there are repositories where those drivers exist, just like with the printer thing. The Chromebook could spin up, the container spins up, says, it's this GPU, go get that driver, put them together. I mean, I'm oversimplifying what is probably an insanely complex thing.
Right, but yeah, you look at it, like
possible.
If you go to the Works with Chromebook has a new page that shows all the official Works with Chromebook hardware, and for whatever reason, I don't know why other companies haven't gotten on board, but if you go to the printer section, it's all HP, but there's probably 100 of them. It looks like HP and Google have worked together to figure out what you just said. Hey, your Chromebook starts up and you have a network printer in your house. Go ping this server and get whatever you need.
I guarantee, and that's all. The whole cups printing thing is what that was.
That's what it is.
They rolled that stuff into the printer service on Chromebooks because I go through a lot of Chromebooks and you do too. Like, I'll need to print something, just needed to yesterday, and I hadn't set up any printers on that particular device. And go get on the network. It sees the printer. You click it. It says setting up. Takes about 5-10 seconds.
Yep.
And then it's like, cool, ready.
You're printing.
Well, what it did was it went and got the drivers and set things up. And so, that kind of operation can work for GPUs and all that kind of stuff down the road.
Yep.
If that's the way they choose to go. So.
Yeah, I mean, and one really cool way that Google could corral that and kind of do some quality assurance on that is just a suggestion, if they haven't already thought about it. Allow Google should create their own database server for Works with Chromebook products. Mm-hmm. If your product is Work with Chromebook certified, give us your put your drivers here,
all the stuff needed.
Anytime you have an update, bring your updates here. That way, people know they're getting what they need from a secured, safe, trusted source, and it all lives right here.
And they might be doing that, like that new settings in there to update peripherals or whatever. And so, I mean.
That's got to be going to, it has to be going to a Google server because who knows what peripherals you have plugged in. Yeah.
Right. So it's got to know, like, ping, here's the MAC address or whatever for this particular mouse. Go find the updates. And I'm still waiting for the time that it actually populates with something.
I'm going to look
this
that up
mouse.
now because, like I said, they just launched a new Works with Chromebook site. It's actually a slide, which is really cool. They're using Google Slides for it. But I wonder, I'll go back in the repository and dig around and see if they actually have some sort of database where they're putting their software and stuff. That'd be cool.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. We appreciate it. We really do. If you don't mind, go down there, hit the thumbs up button. Make sure and subscribe if you haven't already. We're doing an awesome giveaway once we hit 10,000 subscribers on the main podcast channel. And while you're down there, don't forget to click the bell as well to be alerted when we make new videos just like this one. See ya.